Welcome back. This is the Universal Life Podcast, and I'm your host, Ben Colbert, and this is episode 12, part 3 of our Fear series. So if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to episodes 11 and 10, take some time, go back and listen to those, because they do feed into one another, and check those out if you want. But it's been a couple weeks since we've been on the mic, but we're here and we're ready to kick off a new episode. So I want to try to dive right in and dodge the whole review of previous episode like 11, which is what I typically do, at least try to talk about what I covered then. But I'm going to leave that up to you and let you go back and check that out for yourself, because I'm trying to get right into the content and give you some immediate value instead of just pecking my way around and then 10 minutes in give you something. But so hopefully my goal is to give you more bang for your buck, because I know your time is valuable. And we'll go from there. I just know when I listen to podcasts, I would rather the host just dive in and let's roll with it and not beat around the bush with different advertisements and that type of thing. So I do have a plug, by the way, I'm going to throw out here in a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to lead off with this. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time, and it's probably been one of the most helpful things that I've discovered over the past probably 4 years. And I had been reading a couple of books, and a book that I stumbled upon was by a guy named John Eldredge. And the book is called Wild at Heart. And when I read that, I started to look up other content that John Eldredge had written about or spoke about. He has a podcast as well. And one of his influences was a Christian theologian out of the University of Southern California at the time. He's passed away since, but his name was Dallas Willard. And one of the greatest quotes, and I love it, and I see it, and I have it written on all kinds of different things, and in my journals, on my phone, various places. It says, "If a man cannot have order within him, he cannot spread order about him. If a man cannot have order within him, he cannot spread order about him." And I think that rested well with me for various reasons. And I guess from a coach's perspective, I always felt on a Friday night or at practice or in any capacity, in any setting, if I felt like I was out of control emotionally and acting outwardly where I wasn't even keel or just where I was steady, I didn't think like my guys would follow me as well. And I sort of live by that today, and even in the classroom setting. And I can't always say that throughout my career, where I felt as if I got more emotional. I'd raise my voice a lot more. And yes, I do, you need to show passion. You need to be enthusiastic about things to a degree. But when things go wrong, how do you respond? How do you act? So I think this message goes a long way in terms of leadership, and maybe even, or definitely even, in your own personal development. So if you're leading people, if you're attempting to lead, if you're a player on a team, or you're responsible for others, whether it's corporation, maybe you're a manager, CEO, any form of leadership, I think it's vital that you have control within you. And if you have that, then you're able to have more control outwardly. People respond to that better. So I wanted to lead off with that because I think it's very relevant when we're talking about fear and how to speak, how to hold yourself around others, and how to act in maybe volatile situations. And there's other examples of where this comes into play. And I think what's really super relevant to my own life is parenting. I find when I have order within myself, and you find order in various ways, which I'm going to go over, if I'm under control internally, I act better outwardly, and my kids tend to respond better when I don't raise my voice, when I speak gently to them, when I'm calm, I'm controlled, but I also lay out an expectation. I communicate. I talk through things. I tend to get a better response from them compared to when I raise my voice, or I seem to like have an emotional uprising, if that's what you want to call it. But yeah, trying to establish order within my own self is very important when we're talking about parenting, being a dad, being a mom. My wife and I, we talk about this a lot. Just always being conscious of how we are emotionally, how we speak. Are we more in a volatile state, or are we calm and controlled? And then that energy is projected onto our kids. And so at that point, they're able to respond in the same exact manner. I'm trying not to teach them, to get too high, but to stay at an even state so you can operate and continue to go on and be more successful in whatever you choose to do. So parenting, teaching is also critical, which I already mentioned. Just the way that I address my class, the way that I address like when a student is behaving poorly or makes a bad decision, how do I respond to that? How do I walk them through that? Do I yell and scream and carry on and write them up and send them to the principal's office, or do I try to be even and have a regulated response and try to walk them through what correct behavior looks like? Which one has, in the end, a better result for the student and themselves. So, by the way, I got a bubbly going on here. My throat, for some reason, it's spring. I guess pollen's like an inch thick on top of my truck every morning, so my throat's sort of dry, so you have to forgive me here. I'm trying to carry on through this, though. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. That's Dallas Willard, an excellent resource if you're looking for just knowledge, philosophy. He has a lot of Christian-based teachings, which I've found to be extremely helpful. And when I'm talking about Dallas, and he's not the only one, and then John Eldredge, and there's various authors out there or influencers in some capacity that have helped me to stay calm internally, having order within myself. Like, what are the practices that I use to try to stay in that state? Even people like Wim Hof, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that name. Wim Hof, they call him the Iceman, but Wim Hof teaches breath practice and how to use your breath to help control your own state. So whenever you have this sense of anxiety that might creep up in you, how do you use your breath to help calm yourself? Whether that's just nasal breathing, where I'm taking big nasal breaths in and then breathing all the way down into my belly, into my diaphragm, all the way up into my lungs, and learning how to exhale and follow that breath in and out to control my state. Like little tools like that help for me to stay controlled. So, another thing I want to get into is how to embrace the moment, how to enjoy where we're currently at, or presence. I feel like that's a pretty hot topic these days, of just staying current, not looking too far into the future, not looking in the past. The fear of what's coming, with the fear that what just happened, the fear of judgment, which I would mention in these other episodes. But how do I enjoy being where I'm currently at? And I want to talk about a conversation that I have frequently with my students. An example is if I take them out on the track, and I'll say, most people when we go out there, they just want to walk, and they want to walk with the group. Nobody wants to step out of the norm and take off running if no one else is running. Everybody wants to do what the others are doing. And I may tell them to do something, that's something else. But if I say, okay, let's walk 2 laps, a half mile, that's the minimum that you have to get in. Where along the line, do people have maybe the courage to say, okay, if that's the minimum, I'm not going to do the minimum. I'm going to just run 1 lap and be different. And what that would look like internally for me to be able to do that. Because what we're resorting back to here is the fear of judgment. So, how do we get to a point where I try to do things or I push myself to do things for the betterment of me and not have the voice or the internal lizard brain creep in and tell me not to do what I know ultimately is best for my own development? So if I know the minimum is 2 laps, why can't I just take off running, get the 1 lap in by running or 2, and know that running is going to do more for me immediately than walking? So when do we get to the point where we starve more for that than we want acceptance or to be passive and just do whatever it is the minimum is because everybody else is doing it? How do we get to that state internally? And maybe it's a confidence thing. Maybe it just takes time, wisdom, growth, where you ultimately get to a point where you reach your 30s, or in my case 35, 36, where you're just like, I'm over that mind thought. Like I don't care anymore what other people think, because ultimately I'm trying to create the best version of me, and that's all that matters. And if I don't do that, that's going to keep me from reaching my goals. That's going to keep me from climbing the mountain. Maybe it's going to keep me from ultimately getting the scholarship that I'm crazy about, or that I want to get, or the job that I want, the respect that I want on an athletic field in a professional life. How do I get to the point where the fear of judgment doesn't outweigh the want to of being the best version of me? And that's a conversation I have frequently with my students. And sometimes when I present it in that way, I do see like a light come on from time to time where kids are like, you know what, I never really thought about it that way, And at that moment, they don't necessarily take off running, but I help them. Maybe a light comes on, and maybe a week from then, they're like, you know what, I'm going to try this on for a second. I'm going to see if this works. May not be the running part, but it may be, I'm going to choose to do the work in class because I want to do it for me, because I want to be better, and I don't care about the people that choose not to do the work. And I'm just going to go. So here's a quote by Brendon Burchard, a guy that I've referenced several times, that led me down the path of this fear conversation. He says, "We are more alert to the sound of dogs barking than angels singing." And I think that's an unbelievable way to put things. We sometimes have we're more in tune to the negativity that is occurring compared to what the potential greatness could be if we just go. We're distracted, or we're more drawn to the negative energy. Like sometimes the negative energy outweighs and pulls, like that gravitational pull I talked about last episode, draws us in at a faster rate than sometimes the angel singing part. But how do we make that shift? How do you get the momentum to swing towards the angel side? And I think if we can get to the point where we stack wins and we keep doing whatever it is, it may be initially uncomfortable, but if we keep moving in that way day in and day out, the angels singing, they get louder and they get louder and they get louder, and we're able to operate in that space. And in turn, that's where joy is found. And you can remain in joy for longer periods of time compared to that gravitational pull of the negative side of things pulling us in the opposite direction and keeping us passive. So it's really where where the momentum is pulling us. You know, if I got more momentum going towards the good and the betterment of me, I'm going to remain there, and that's going to sustain itself. Or it could be the opposite, which, you know, it looks different in different parts of your day, different parts of your life, you know, and you just have to create a plan. You have to follow that plan. You got to just choose to do the things that are uncomfortable. So, I've got somebody behind me here, maybe going to knock on my door, so we'll see how this goes. The next note here says, open your eyes to what is possible. Find the good in the moments and remain there. And I think that goes towards the angel singing part, is where is joy found and how do we remain there? Opening our eyes, and sometimes there's a fog there that we don't really know what direction to go in. Here's the next note. Where is more life found on the back end is another way of trying to determine where you need to go. Where is more life found on the back end? Long term, if I go this way, where am I going to end up? You know, and I think that something that's important to understand is not allowing the small-minded, ridiculing type personality to harness you. You know, focus on the thing that's on the back end and have tunnel vision towards that. Create more momentum, let the angels sing, and remain there. Here's another question I've asked my students frequently over the past couple of years, especially during COVID. And here's a plug. I have a something I've mentioned a couple times is a journal that I write in. I've sort of tapered off here lately, but I'm going to get back to it. I need to order another journal. But there's a company, it's called BestSelf. I'm going to throw this up here. BestSelf, and it's an Icebreaker deck. And basically what this is it's great for one-on-one or group discussions. It's basically a template for conversations. I could basically just ask a question. So what I'll do, I'll get up in front of my class and I'll just pull one of these out just to start a conversation. And this one particular Icebreaker is what it's called. It says, would you rather be a star player on a losing football team or ride the bench on a winning one? And when I asked this, I asked it to one of my freshman level PE classes. Most people within the class said that they would rather be a star player on a losing football team instead of riding the bench on a winning one. And why do I bring this up, you know, at this current moment is because sometimes I think joy comes into play here. I think, you know, satisfaction comes into play, you know, immediate gratification, you know, and not understanding the larger picture, not taking the, you know, the diamond in the sunlight and like sort of tilting it and looking at it from a different point of view. I think it's easy to sit here and say, yes, I want to be a star player, but what's the ultimate goal? And when you sit here and you look at finding the good in the moments and remaining there, I think it's really difficult, especially as a freshman, you know, 14-year-old. It's hard to sit on the bench and find the joy in it. I get that. It's very difficult. But maybe if we approach it as coaches, individuals, from a different perspective and how we deliver it and how we teach, like, what if we consistently relayed the message, find a specific role, and your goal is to take that role and help contribute to the betterment of the team. And in turn, while you do that, you're trying to find the joy in the small things that are occurring while you're doing it. You know, so if you're not the star player, what are the things that you can do to help support the team? Number one, maybe that's, hey, I'm going to be the first out today, and while I'm the first out, I'm going to carry as many bags out as I possibly can to the field, or I'm going to make sure the balls are out. I'm going to make sure we got water coolers filled to the brim of ice, and I'm going to put fresh water in them so everybody's in a good mood whenever they're out on the field on a hot day. And when I see that during halfway through the practice, when our star players that have earned their stripes, they're juniors and seniors, so they've been taking those reps, and they start talking about how good the water is, I'm going to rest in the fact that they are pleased with what they currently have, and I'm contributing to their development. And in turn, that helps to create a better culture, and it helps to have a better mood amongst everybody on the team. So the water cooler example, it could be absolutely anything. It could be cleaning up the weight room after a workout, after practice, making sure that the field is immaculate before you go in, to whenever you show up to a meeting, you bring a box of pencils with you every day because you know your teammates sometimes forget their pencils, but you're the pencil guy or girl, and you always have a pencil, or you always have an extra 50-cent pad of paper with you, and you're handing those things out like Skittles, and you're finding your role, and you're helping others in their development. How do we get to that? And while you do it, people will absolutely be appreciative of that, we hope, and you may be riding the bench, but at the same time, you're finding joy in it, and you're patient, and you will eventually, one, build a culture, you'll earn respect from others, and then down the road, you'll get the opportunity to play and potentially be at a high level at that moment, because you understand what goes into being great, instead of just chilling off to the side, waiting 3 years to play. What can you do to really, really dive in and be encompassed in the team, to really take on an attitude of just absolute betterment that spills into other people. It's just the whole energy piece. So I thought it was always interesting when I bring that up, and then like after that conversation, we talk about it with some of my students. They're like, I could see that now. Instead of like culturally says, I want to be the star player. I don't care if we're good or not. But for me, if you shift it, and you start to talk and you start thinking about being more selfless, and I'm okay with riding the bench for a while. I'm going to find other ways to create joy for myself, but I'm going to learn, build, grow, and ultimately may win, or not win, but play down the road. And if I don't, then I don't, but I was part of something great, and I contributed to it. So I wanted to sneak that in there because, there's fear baked into it. Fear, and this is another Brendon Burchard quote, it says, fear is louder and more intense than our desire for self-mastery. Self-mastery being the power to control one's actions, your impulses or your emotions, being able to harness whatever it is that you're wanting to do, to put things that may give you quick satisfaction on the back burner because I have a long-term vision for what I want. And, great things aren't accomplished within a couple of months. They're accomplished over years and years of practice and development. So fear, that internal voice, is louder. The dogs barking are louder than the angels are singing. So how do we overcome or develop a power to control our actions consistently, our impulses, our emotions? We need tools to do that. Contribution to others as well, as we're talking about this. So fear is louder and more intense than our desire for self-mastery, but also the contribution to the greater good. And that goes back to this question of, do I want to be the star player on a bad team, or am I okay with riding the bench on a great team? Am I okay with contributing to others? Being a leader, being a vocal leader, leading by example, doing the things that are right at all times, performing selfless acts, volunteering to do the things that nobody else wants to do. And this is also outside of coaching. We're talking about parenting, adulthood, dadhood, motherhood. I ultimately want what's best for my family type mentality in every decision that I make. How do I get there? Where you get to the point where it's just all things are selfless and you're able to put your own agenda to the side because love ultimately wins. I have a quote that I taped over here on my paper clip holder. It says, "For those I love, I will sacrifice." I have that written. It rests on my desk every day. And it's sort of that reminder of to choose love. When things are difficult, when I'm tired, try to rest in the fact that I'm going to choose love and I'm going to sacrifice my own wants and immediate needs for the greater good. Because I think long term, ultimately, things culturally, within my own family, or even if you're talking about team, coaching, teaching, your job, culture will build and things will be better on the back end compared to the sense of immediate gratification because I want to hang out or rest or I want to do this or that. How can you respond? And maybe that's one of my mantras here is just, for those I love, I will sacrifice. And I'm not perfect by any means. Believe me, that internal voice creeps up. It's like, I'm tired. I just want to lay down. I'm exhausted. But I'm going to choose that mentality way more than I don't. And I think if we can get to that point, you begin to win. Your family begins to win, or your team begins to win. You're in your professional job. The culture grows. So in the next episode, we'll talk about training the mind and what that looks like. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into part 4. But for now, we'll leave it right there. We'll tie a bow around this episode. And once again, thanks for being here. And if you haven't had the opportunity, go over to YouTube and go to the Universal Life podcast channel. You can watch this, or go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Subscribe, like, hopefully leave a comment. It would help us grow, or help me grow. For some reason, I think there's multiple people going on here. Maybe one day, but yeah, just follow us and spread the word. And once again, thanks for being here. I hope you have a terrific day, and we'll see you again next time.